Hello, I am Jeff Greenberg, and welcome to episode 2 of Star Wipes. Our first one went so well that my good friend and compatriot and colleague here, Michael Kammes, decided to come back for the second one. As always, it's good to see you, Michael.
You too. What's crack-a-lackin', Jeff?
What's crack-a-lackin'?
I'm feeling very 90s today.
And
not like Vanilla Ice 90s. I'm thinking more like the comeback of Duran Duran, Ordinary World, Beavis and Butthead. I'm in that realm more than Vanilla Ice.
On the Beavis and Butthead, there was Beavis and Butthead Do the Universe. I haven't seen it.
I think Robert Ash cut it, I believe, who was on Conan for a while. I believe he did the edit on that. I saw it, but I saw it knowing full well that I'd be drinking heavily through it. So I don't remember nothing at all. So I don't remember the second half.
All right. First half, second half, episode 2. All the technical mistakes were mine. We got great feedback in the subreddit. We got great feedback on YouTube. Anything you want to do a callback to? Maybe Rachel is right, by the way. Rachel, I love your Pomodoro technique. And maybe we will tap on you to do the edit, because clearly I am either an overworked human father of 3 and a lot of things going on, or I'm a lousy editor, and probably both of those things are true. Michael.
In terms of throwbacks, this was on Twitter. A lot of folks said they were interested in listening, but they were looking for a more traditional podcast, which is, listening on Stitcher or Spotify or one of those services, as opposed to just being a YouTube stream. And I hope I can speak for both of us that if the reception of this is good and it keeps going well, I don't think it would be a big deal to create an audio only version of this and then have it syndicated on your favorite player. So I don't think that'll be something that'll be difficult to do, but we really have to kind of get our legs underneath us on this before we take that next step and spend more time in that realm.
Yeah, you're dead on. I mean, when you and I started talking about this, the goal was originally that it had podcast sensibilities, which is why we bring up and we speak out the actual posts as well as call out people's names, just for this idea here that we could use multiple places that this can go, wherever it's most comfortable for people. We even have discussed the idea of posting it at double speed in places like YouTube, just for people who don't want to have to find the double speed button. I don't know. I still think that's got viability. With this, I think we should get started. And somebody in the YouTube channel said, maybe you should call it quick times for the back end, the quick pieces. And then, Michael, you came up with the idea of long form and short form. And I just love the idea of calling our deep dives long form and the short pieces short forms. I feel it's so representative of our industry. And so with that, I'd like to take us into our first long form item. Mr. Kammes, YouTube editing is killing me. When we first started talking about this, started talking about the idea that we'd break apart some threads and you would pick one, I would pick one, we'd find some synergy. And of course, I brought for you for our second episode, not one, but two items. We'll pick apart this first one, YouTube editing is killing me. And then I think as a sort of a commentary afterwards, this, am I too slow at editing? So 44YYZ brings up, YouTube editing is killing me. I'm working for a YouTuber and I love it. That said, it's killing me. 8 hours of editor-like focus, causing me to skip meals, throws off my sleep. I'm exhausted afterwards. And I cancel personal time if I fail to maintain deadline targets. 8 hours most days jobs is standard, but surely most jobs have passive work. Am I doing it wrong? I feel 5 hours of active editing would be my limit for sustainability. And all I can say is, whoa. 5 hours is like, even 5 hours is of laser focus is a little much. What do you think, man?
I know I need to take breaks. I know I need to research things, right? Maybe I have to go grab some additional graphics. Maybe I need to research a topic. Maybe I need to break up the monotony by saying, look, I'm going to stop cutting picture and maybe create some lower thirds or just something else to kind of break it up. But 5 hours of just pure editing nonstop, that's tough. I think luckily, go ahead.
It feels like you don't, like, part of the reason that you just can't do it that long is you don't have fresh eyes. As is, I come in the next day to an edit and I see all the mistakes lined out. If I'm trying to work for 8 hours, I have no objectivity whatsoever.
No, that's completely the case. I get in one of two ways, which is either everything is wrong and nothing feels right, or I can't be objective. And as you said, that's when you need the fresh eyes, and that's when, at the least take a walk, at the least get a meal. But at best, come and do it the next day. I think, luckily, one of the best comments on this entire thread comes from Triangle Square 15, and they talk about never skip a meal. Pretty sure that's illegal, if you're in the union and in most work environments, right? They can't make you work through lunch. But there are some things that they mentioned about YouTubers, and you brought up a great point when we were discussing this before, is that it may not be your fault. Right? It may be because of who is employing you. And I think for that, I'll defer, because I think you had some great points on just the YouTube culture in general when it comes to post-production.
Well, the struggle we all have is, and it has nothing to do with editing or computer use, it's being able to budget our time in life and how long things take. And there's this great, boy, I should have dug this up and made us watch it. There's a great piece out there. If you Google Spider-Man in 1 minute, there's this great artist piece of somebody drawing Spider-Man for like 10 minutes, 1 minute, and 10 seconds. And it gives you the idea of just how refined things get. The struggle we have in estimating our times personally is we almost always universally imagine everything going perfect and budgeting our time as if our lives were perfect elements. And the fact is they're not. This is why you're always told to budget in, to have like 30% extra downtime or 40% longer than you think, for this exact reason. I don't think it's necessarily YouTube endemic beyond so much of what social media is from a personal level, like this, may not have the same pay, may just be a labor of love, and somebody may be willing to just work extra hard. And clearly, our poster here says exactly that. I'm working for a YouTuber and I love it. And the fact that, he or she says, I love it, says a lot to, their level of commitment.
This probably dovetails into the second part of this deep dive. What I wanted to expose is that, and what I meant about the YouTube culture is that often folks who are beginning, who have a starter channel on YouTube, who are just getting into medium-sized channels, may not be familiar with the post-production lifestyle or time frames. And so they're used to, hey, I cut my blog or my vlog and it takes me X amount of time. Well, okay, now you're doing stuff with sponsors, now you're doing stuff with graphics, now you're doing stuff with people who do these tasks professionally. And in that vein, they need more time. So you need to set expectations and make sure that the people who are employing you through YouTube understand that for you to do your work, this is the time frame I think I can do it in, and anything faster may not be feasible for a good end product. So it's setting those boundaries and expectations.
Boundaries are really critical, and Chamomile brings up a TV station will have several editors for a daily long newscast. The longest piece, 4 to 5 minutes, but most are a minute or so. I've done a lot of work around news. I've done a lot of education in news. And these short pieces are all they focus on. And it's got a producer, it's got talent, it's got an editor. And it might only be 90 seconds on air. And that's their one job for today, is this one little piece. Meanwhile, our poster here, I didn't know what the length is that they mentioned, but my Lord, a long piece could take you a week at this sort of speed, especially if you do it with care. And Seven Cooley Sunday, I wait, by the way, I wait for the moment, Mr. Kammes, when we get into one of those usernames that is really, really an adult username, I'm sure it's going to happen faster than I want. But Seven Cooley Sunday says, it's not really sustainable if this guy's making money, get someone else in there. I think that ends up being the crux of a lot of it. We see so many posts, especially I see so many posts of somebody saying, I'm overworked, I don't have enough time. And my answer is almost always the same thing. If you were getting paid 5 times the amount of money, would this feel like a satisfying job? And the answer is, of course, almost universally. There is, whether it's pay, whether it's that we're all cheap, whether we're all under the pressure of the economy, everybody's looking for it for less. And that's a painful thing some days.
I think there's something else that's pretty interesting about one of the posts that you mentioned, Jeff, is that it's the am I too slow at editing? And that's always very difficult to determine because there really isn't an objective, you should be able to accomplish X, Y, Z in 90 minutes. Because depending on if it's news, if it's infotainment, if it's a documentary, if it's new, there's no way to say you have to accomplish X amount of cuts. You have to elicit these types of emotions. So unfortunately, the only way to find out if you are editing too slow compared to what's expected is to work with the community, talk to the community, ask questions like Reddit, and then talk to your manager, whoever your boss is, and say, this is how I'm thinking, this is how long it's going to take. Why don't we try it like this and see if that works? And maybe I'll find out it doesn't. I need another hour. Maybe you'll find out you need more versions done. Okay, I need more time to do those revisions for different platforms. So unfortunately, there isn't a test. It just has to be experience.
There's not only not a test, but one of the real deadly things here is the idea that you can be faster or slower. And the answer is you will be faster at some things, slower than others. Definitely the workflow itself is so vital. But I remember working with a group out of DC where this one editor, who, by the way, was shaking a lot and chain smoking. So we're talking, early 2000s, mid 2000s. If this one particular producer knew this guy was there, instead of having her story done 2 hours in advance, 3 hours in advance, she would sometimes bring it to him 45 minutes before air. And because he was so good at her last minute procrastination, if you will, it was driving him crazy. And those boundaries, and I think you hit Hitch Not Rich brings up that boundaries are so important. Keeping yourself healthy is so important. And he brings up the workflow issue, and the workflow issue almost always comes up along these discussions because there's like, well, am I working as fast as I could, as smart as I could? The answer is generally the problem is not the workflow, it's the expectations. And the hardest part in my book is often the people who are assigning the work or hiring for the work don't always have the best expectations of how long it takes to make the sausage. And in that respect, painfully, they use it based on their knowledge, which is how long does it take me to go to Canva and put something up? How long does it take me to do something in Word?
I will say across the board, the fastest editors that I've seen are rarely touching their mouse. They know their shortcut keys, so they're already thinking 10 steps ahead onto what key combinations they have to hit. TMZ, for example, you can imagine the amount of stuff that they're pushing through on a daily basis. And they routinely go to air from the edit bay because they just haven't finished the cut. And working with them for quite a while, it was evident that all of them were keyboard warriors. They had everything at a macro, tied to a macro or just to a keyboard press, and they flew through editing. Some of the fastest editors you've ever seen. So the only common denominator is they know their key commands.
It certainly helps. There's a bunch of reality TV discussions here from Media Offline. That is such a great name. And Junior Swing being in documentary, being in reality TV, of 8-hour days of active work. Of course, how focused they are across those time periods is a little bit harder to determine. Being an editor on a network show is 10 hours of work, but Spicy Peanut Sauce says, yeah, but I'm usually not actively editing for 8 hours. What the OP is describing is crash editing. And that's the thing that I think is really important to keep in mind. This person is trying to tie themselves down to a desk and work the entire time, which is never a good idea.
Agreed.
And that brings us to the second piece here. I think, I'm just checking the bottom of the thread to make sure there's nothing, right. Hey, there's that a-hole guy, Greenysmac, saying, because I'm so exhausted afterwards, and I asked that simple question, are you being paid enough? It simply sounds like you're trying to over-deliver. And then I bring up my two less than capitalist subreddits, anti-work and work reform, which I think are both good reads in general. I bring up also that flip side of this. Am I too slow at editing? I pulled these all-nighters. This is from Apple Bottom Whore. There you go. There's a great username. I was given 5 weeks to cut 12 5-minute promos. On top of that, I have to edit 20, 30-second videos for social. I don't feel fast enough, especially now I'm expected to do stuff in After Effects. I'm working on... This is damning. This is damning. I'm working on a pretty well-known reality series, and the pay is decent. I just feel like no matter what, I'm always behind. And here comes the bad inside voice mindset. I'll probably never get booked again. I don't even feel like I got any sort of summer and just been stuck inside all day. You've been stuck inside all day. You didn't get a summer. There's got to be a balance between like where you are in life.
If this person is on a fairly known unscripted show, what are the other editors there? Are they running into the same issue? Or are they having work-life balance? Because, I don't want to call anyone out, but if there are half a dozen editors and 5 of them are say, yeah, it's a lot of work, but, it's manageable, and one person's not, okay, that may need a reframing. That may need, let's work on your workflow. Let's work on key commands, different techniques other editors use, and see if we can't cut out some fat there. But without knowing how the rest of the team is doing, it's kind of a just shot in the dark.
I love Raytheon Orion's line here. They're taking advantage of you and gaslighting you into insecurity. These are age-old practices. Chin up, soldier. Yeah, that's the hardest part is there's never been a point in any gig I've ever worked, or inside or outside the field, where people go, we need you to do more. And you know what? That stuff we asked you to do more a month, 6 months ago, we were wrong. We need you to do less. We need you to focus more. It becomes, we're going to pile enough until you crack up, maybe quit, maybe leave. And then the next guy that comes in, we'll give them less because we don't want them to leave the same way.
The response I've cultivated over the years, and I know I didn't invent this by any stretch, is when you're asked to do more and you feel like you're already at that breaking point is, I can take this on, but what in my current workload can I decrease or delegate or hand off because I can't maintain the level of quality with this now shortened deadline because I have to do other work. So what's got to give? And I find that spawns discussion on how to make this more doable for the creative.
On the what's got to give, my wife is a public school teacher, and legit, there is this, we're going to bring you more work, and they take nothing off her plate ever. And that just, or if they did, it was going to be the stuff that she loved doing. This is the struggle with these things. And when I look here, Active Matrix 99 brings out the only way out of this hell is to log your time on each sub-project and report your concerns immediately. And that comes back to a good manager, a good producer is trying to save your sanity because he knows the editor's holding the hot potato. And if I burn the editor's hands, it's going to be a while before I get a productive person. And here we have a post called, How Do You Deal with Distressing Content as an Editor?
I think before we dive into this, we probably should put up a trigger warning because some of the things that we're probably going to read or mention from our experiences just may be uncomfortable So just I thought I'd put a trigger out there. Luckily, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can jump to the next question, so you don't have to listen to this.
And if this makes it into the podcast version of this, my best advice would be to, especially if you've got anything over footage or materials that are sensitive, just skip it. We feel for you. Nobody deserves to have stuff that's upsetting thrown in their face. Interestingly, our poster here, Art Different 448, said, "Didn't expect so many replies. Give me a day and I'll come back to you all." And
can you summarize the original?
I don't remember. The original's not here.
Okay.
He edited it.
So we have to assume that this editor was tasked with working with footage that was either against their moral or religious beliefs, perhaps against their political beliefs, perhaps violence, perhaps animal cruelty. I mean, it could be any number of things. Could be war. Go ahead.
I've worked with a bunch of editors in the early 2000s in New York, and the footage there was 9/11 raw footage, stuff that I didn't want to see, they didn't want to see. It could be any of these items, including people's conflating it with their own personal histories in life. So assumably it's the OP going, I had to work on stuff and it upset me. What do I do? And one of the heroes here, I think it's a hero or somebody who's saying the right thing, is Goat Wizard Doom 666. If you're that shook, maybe you should be asked to be put on a different show. Along with Pat Patrol saying best course of action would be to get into therapy, which is almost a good idea for any human being at least a couple points in their life.
I love the tip from Mantania, which is working with the footage in a way that it's less dire. I don't know how to phrase it, which is something like turn off the sound of the video, make it black and white. You can always take off those effects, right, when it goes to online or when you export. But doing that to try and take away the graphicness of it, if it is violence, unfortunately, I think when you're dealing with political ads, a lot of it is text over pictures, which is kind of hard to do that. But if we're talking about violence, yeah. And to your point, you mentioned 9/11. I worked on a documentary called The Ironworkers of 9/11, and it was based on, you guessed it, the folks who built the towers and then went there to obviously clean up after the events of 9/11. And we were allowed to use the video, but we couldn't use the audio. And I was doing post audio at the time. And so I had to recreate explosions, fires, screams, those types of things. And I can tell you how I handled it. First, I did everything I could to have the music hot in that scene, in those shots, because I wanted to kind of subdue the realness of it. But that wasn't something the producer wanted. The producer wanted that gritty realism, so that had to go in there. And I had nightmares. I couldn't believe I was sound designing something like this. I wasn't in a position where I could turn down the job, which made it that much worse. If I, was fine, I'll pass and someone else can do it, that would have made life a heck of a lot easier, but it wasn't something I could pass at the time. But what I took it as, in my mind, I took it as a way, how can I be artistic with this? How can I use my audio skills in more than just sound effects editing and music mixing? And how can I create a more artistic landscape and have that be the challenge, as opposed to sitting with, what scream sounds best, right? What fits the picture best. And so that helped me. But it certainly was several weeks of sleepless nights and just being in a pretty foul mood.
I'm going to call out, because it's such a great comment here from Mantania, the one you said. Pro tip: if you have to watch intensive footage, you can turn off the sound, make it black and white, make it less vivid and easier to work with. I'm not going to read through the rest of it, because the post that I will do one line here, which is, you never forget your first beheading. And if you would like to read that, the link is in the notes here. It's a great thread. It's a great thread about dealing with difficult work. it
I'd like
certainly,
to
yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to share another story just because to this day, when I tell it to people, it gets a little bit easier to talk about. But this is just a very interesting and odd predicament. So again, trigger warning. This had to be 15 years or so ago. I was attending a funeral for an infant who had passed away. The infant was only a few weeks old. And I arrived with my partner at the time. And the parents of the infant who had passed came up to me, and they had a video camera, and they had known that, you know, I was working in the industry to some extent back then. And they gave me the camera, and they said, "We want you to film this." And I, you know, was kind of taken aback. I didn't say anything, and they said, and be sure to get the casket, and be sure to get everyone here. And, you know, looking back on it, they probably don't have a lot of memories or mementos or things because the child passed away so young. But what a predicament to be in, right? Because that is completely out of the norm. It to me feels very intrusive to be filming, you know, a lifeless body. But also, you know, it's the parents, and who should turn down the parents in their time of need like that. So I did it, but it was the most surreal experience ever. And I'm not saying that's what pushed me into post-production instead of production, but it certainly made me feel very grateful for being in an edit bay and not on location somewhere.
I will give you my little less difficult version of this. This was before I was in the field, and a friend of mine, I worked with her, you know, she was like, "I know you have a video camera. Would you mind, you know, loaning us your camera so we can go and video our birth, the birth of our child?" I'm like, "Sure, not a problem. Would love to. Please don't worry about when you return it. You guys are going through a lot of stuff." And then they come back to me and they go, "The tape is really little. Can you help us get it onto something else?" I'm like, "Sure, you just plug it into VHS." I'm over at their house, and evidently, there's no easy way to say this. The money shot is there on camera, and I'm suddenly seeing my colleague, my coworker, with a little bit more intimacy than I ever imagined I would know her and her husband with. And they're super sweet people, but it was definitely one of the, you know, looking back now as a parent, not a big deal, but at the time, you know, it was just a whole new level of knowledge of friends. Didn't need any therapy for that one at the time.
Did you avoid contact?
Yeah,
Eye contact with them for a while?
I'm sure I did.
Or you made sure that you looked at nowhere but their forehead, right? I'm not looking lower at all.
Absolutely. No, I made extra eye contact. That's what I did.
Let's make this really creepy.
Absolutely. All right. All right. Short form, almost called Quick Times, but you know, nobody wants to be sued by Apple.
That sounds like a 50s doo-wop group, doesn't it? 50s or 60s doo-wop group, the Quick Times.
It does, and I think that's a great item for. Wait, I don't even want to ask who the QuickTime X's are, because that's the new version of QuickTime.
That's in Van Nuys. That's in Chatsworth out here in LA. If you know the area, you know the area. You know what goes on there. So I think that's where the QuickTime X's are.
Absolutely. Here we go. We're going to jump through a whole bunch of posts, although we're going to end on one that's a little bit longer here, which will be interesting. Let's start off. What's your title, salary, city? This is a phenomenal thread to browse. What you're going to see, though, of course, is a lot of the numbers here being sometimes really high, depending on where people are. I love this, me, an Indian, looking at your American paychecks. I also think that, you know, cost of living makes a huge difference in where you live. It's one of the reasons I'm in the middle of nowhere, Delaware. Your thoughts?
Well, first of all, they link to BCPC. And if you aren't familiar with BCPC, it's the Blue Collar Post Collective. And it's a group of fine, predominantly younger creatives, mostly editors, around the world, and they have regionalized groups around the world where they have meetups and networking events and whatnot, and they're very inclusive. So it's not so you have different genders, different
Phenomenal
colors.
group. They run a brilliant survey every year, and this is a link to it. I think we even have it in the wiki because it's so
Katie
important.
Hinson, she's
Katie.
traditionally done it. I don't know if she's continuing to do it right now, but yearly she gets a survey and hundreds of people respond with, "Here's my role. Here's how much I make. Here's the gender I identify with." So we can kind of see that there's still pay pay differences between men and women, or however you identify. But I think that the document helps immensely because it's giving you the ability to kind of suss out your local competition and if you are undercharging or overcharging.
Nobody on this planet will ever say that they are overcharging. Everybody will say they're undercharging. Let's take it to another one. Proxy math conversion. Divide by two. Divide by two, divide by four.
No, you're completely right. Cameras nowadays are shooting in such higher rasters, your machine may not be able to handle that, coupled with the difficulty of the codec. So we work in proxies, right? And we do the offline-online methodology workflow. So creating proxies that have the same aspect ratio as the original makes it easier for that to translate to an online when you're reconforming, relinking. So it's important to get your ratios right. So the effects that you do, any resizing or movement you do translates properly. And in this thread, there is a great link to a website that, let me scroll down to that. There's a great website by Moses is Here, who references Andrew Hedges' proxy site that you can type in your resolution and it will give you your aspect ratio for the proxies for that clip. And as Jeff said, if you don't want to do that, divide by 2 or 4, and that should get you there too.
The one thing I'll say is thank God we're not dealing with non-square pixels anymore because I don't even like those discussions. If you don't know what I mean by pixel aspect ratio, consider you to have a blessed life. That's all I can say.
And for everyone else out there who still has nightmares over graphics for DVDs, you know exactly what we're talking about.
Absolutely. And there's some good PSD counseling if you need it. Overexposed footage. This one's real easy for me. Check it on set, for God's sake. Same thing with audio. If you don't, that's where 99% of your problems are easy to fix.
In this specific example, the OP listed some stills and the sky's just blown out. And on top of it, it's recorded in H.264, which, as you know, is not forgiving in terms of color grading because of all the compression. That's another reason why it may be best for you to try and shoot RAW or log, and of course those titles get interchanged depending on who the manufacturer is, but shoot in a codec that is more forgiving. If you can't do that, the only thing you can try and do, some folks will try and make it artistic, right? And put it in black and white, jack up the contrast. Some people will superimpose a sky, and there's tons of tutorials out there how to superimpose a sky. But I think for this shot that was shown in this thread, there's not much you can do.
But this is the nightmarish trope of fix it in post is such a heated thing because all somebody had to do on set in location was check it. And there's a lot of that, well, I can't control what my clients do. You can't. But the moment you see footage and you know it's valuable, that's the point where you call the client, you go, this is amateur shot. I'm sorry, I'll return your money, but there's a problem here. And maybe you build it as a stipulation in the contract. If I didn't do the acquisition, if you didn't get professional acquisition, it's not my fault. It's your problem.
And learn to use zebras. Learn to use zebras on set so you can check where things are blown out and so you don't have to utter those words, fix it in post.
I'll tell you, I built for a company, I'll be able to talk about it in a couple of weeks. I built a false color preset for webcams. So when you're bringing yourself up on a webcam and you don't have zebra striping, you don't have the ability to do anything other than expose and guess, you can actually go and see a false color off of a webcam. It's a neat idea. I'm surprised it's not in every like OBS or whatever tool is getting used. Let's take us to our next one here. Best way for self-taught editor to professionalize skills and learn fundamental techniques. I think I speak for all of us to go work for somebody else. And if you can't get that job for somebody else, sadly, it may mean interning for a little, but I don't think there is any other way to get soft skills that are professional skills than this. And that may not be what everybody wants to hear.
I think for posts like this, we need a buzzer button to sound effect, and it just has like a Zellen alert, right? Because we've got Mr. Bob Zellen, the man, the myth, the legend, commenting on here, and obviously Bob has very strong opinions, and that you need to make the client happy, and they'll remember you. And once they remember you, you're in the club, and when you're in the club, you will continue to get jobs. And I think that, I mean, there are some solid points there. But I think to your point, Jeff, you don't know what you don't know. And if you work at, let's say, a corporation in your 20s to 30s, you may know your job really well, but you haven't done a lot of work outside that. So you may not know how the other half lives, how other creative environments operate, and how you're expected to perform in these other facets. So I'm a big fan of freelancing when you're younger, when you're in your late teens, in your 20s, because usually your needs are light. You normally don't have to make as much money. Usually there aren't marriages and mortgages and kids and all that. And that allows you to jump to different projects, learn the skills, not only on how to edit in those genres, but also for the aforementioned soft skills that are still needed. Despite the fact we're all working from home, we still need to have soft skills to not only collaborate with our clients, but have them be friends, professional friends that will call on you later.
I think one of those magic things is, and I had one 6 months ago where I had something, I gave client advice. I tried to do some of the work myself, couldn't spend the time, and it mean the time to get it perfect. I reached out to a friend. I did the phone a friend, and a buddy of mine fixed it like in 30 minutes. And that's part of that professional skill set, is knowing when you're over your head, knowing how to pull somebody in. And while it's easy to pull in another professional, it has been in the past, on occasion, a lawyer for when you're in over your head, when a client has become difficult. That's going to take us to just got fired from a job for the first time. I've been editing for 11 years, been a pro assistant editor for 4, just started booking projects left and right. Recently, I was booked to do a fine cut feature-length doc, ridiculous 6-day schedule. I got a call from the director, expected more visual polish, that my cut didn't actually address the problems and fired me, and then said he only watched the first 24 minutes of my 80-minute cut.
Boundaries. I mean, obviously the producer had an idea of what they wanted. And I would have thought the editor would have been able to take a look at the product he was getting and then give an estimate. I don't know if they were provided the ability to do that. But just looking at this, that's an unrealistic thing to request, is a 6-day schedule for a feature-length doc.
Not only is it crazy, but it's the sort of thing where if you're the editor coming in to do a fix edit, you want to go, first, I want to watch what it is, see what some of the dailies are, and then I'm going to pitch to you what I think it is before I get into this sort of crazy crunch. Because 6 days, this is, it's funny, Michael, there's almost a theme here that we're seeing in this episode of too little time. Where whether it was the first person, but everywhere along the line, there's this idea that there's just not enough time. Because in a proper relationship, I would love to think that this person was doing the 6-day crunch to go, here's my first pass of what I think this would be. And for a producer to go, oh, it's not polished enough, says to me so many pieces of insanity here. They totally dodged a bullet.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I hope that there was some guaranteed in there. I hope that they did get some pay out of this, because, yeah, I know you're a bit bummed, but I would rather have you be a bit bummed now than go through another month, 2 months, or whatever on this project and then hate everyone.
Oh, God, yes. Oh, God, yes. Am I the only one scared of AI replacing his job? That there was actually another AI post that past week. The last about 6 years, 7 years, I've been doing work in and around advising AI, and it's really amazing some of the things, but it's almost universally broken for that last mile. And I don't know if you caught this last week. Tesla was doing. There was some independent group doing some testing with Tesla's automatic pilot, and it just mowed down children. It just mowed down dummies of children, not real children, but they went and they tested, and it drove right through the children. Again, maybe, possibly requiring some of the PTSD therapy, you know. But AI, I'm hoping, will take out the crappy parts of a lot of our work. There's some good comments in here.
The one I really like is Archetype. Was it Archetype Pal Dream? Archetype Pal Dream?
Give me a second. Let me get to. Yeah.
Archie Tapald Dream.
Sure.
Archie. We'll call you Archie. I like the synopsis of seems like AI will just help us create cooler-ish faster. Where all AI and ML is gone at this point is how can we automate the monkey tasks, the dragging your knuckles across the keyboard and grunting approvingly, the things that are done easily and are repeatable. And doing things like transcribing, doing things like facial recognition, scene recognition, logo recognition, sentiment recognition, being able to organize things. That's going to make the creative process smoother. Now, we all know that's not going to give us any more time to create because they're just going to compress the schedule. So, but the thing to know is that we are far, far away, and I'm talking decades from the point where a story can be put together and have it be anywhere even in the ballpark of a professional editor who can tell a story. So I'm not concerned about that taking your job away at all. And also, you know that we are just getting more and more media platforms, right? So there's always, and if we continue in this trajectory, there's going to be more outlets for video. There's going to be more places that need content. So even if AI does cut into those lower beginner jobs, there's still going to be more jobs overall because of this video becoming just so ubiquitous everywhere.
What happens with all? There are two things we're gonna see. Let me do the dark one. Some group out there probably is already out there. Go, you don't need an editor. We can do this now. And I'll tell you, the work won't be very satisfying that it does. It'll be the mediocre junk it puts out. Dane is right now one of the things doing it for imagery, for stills. The stuff that's going to be put out is going to be generally noise. It'll do the job. It won't be a great job. It won't be the worst job on the planet, but it won't be great. What has always been the occurrence in all technology, though, is you end up having to have more pieces of skill. So once upon a time, there was no color correction in the tool. Color had to go somewhere else. Now editors are expected, graphics are expected, audio is expected. Transcripts will now become the expectation because all of it has become easy. So I think those two pieces are true.
Embrace the technology because you can't avoid it.
Absolutely. You don't want to be the person upset because there's nobody to push the buttons on the elevator anymore for you. Anyone have any resources to learn about sound and audio? Gone in 60 Frames brings up the art of mixing, mastering Adobe Audition 3 way back when, and then brings up one of my favorite resources in general is formerly Lynda, now LinkedIn Learning. If your local library happens to have access to it for free, it's a phenomenal resource. Mine doesn't. Microsoft bought LinkedIn, who bought Lynda. And it's the idea that you can get some good above 101, well-produced, professionally designed classes. Not to knock Udemy or Skillshare, but I know that Lynda does a lot of production behind it. You've got a lot to say, though, generally about sound and audio, sir. Please.
How I learned immensely, that worked immensely well, was I was able to get sequence Pro Tools sessions from folks who were editing and mixing Hollywood films. And of course, this was back long time ago. But being able to reverse engineer and say, oh, I see when there was a punch, there was the arm movement, there's the whoosh, there's the impact of the hand, impact of the face, there's the whoosh after the physical recoil. There are all these different elements or building blocks, the Lego blocks of sound design, and being able to see that's how they did it. Okay, I can then in my brain put that together and say I see the soundscape now. So that helped immensely.
Have you at all looked at the subreddit called Edit Lines?
No.
So that, we should always do each time, like a subreddit you should check out. There's a subreddit called Edit Lines, and it's just pictures of people's timelines with commentary behind it. One of the ones I think recently was for a feature film, and I was just impressed, of course, at all the layers and pieces. Reverse engineering is great. Something you brought up that I thought was necessary, really valuable here, aside from the wiki and the resource of video of our editors, over on video editing, there's often a lot of really strong content where more experienced people are trying to actively produce some guidance for hobbyist level. And Virtual Ad 16 asked the question about how to do some of this work. And there's a great piece here by Tim V and DIJKNL about what your LUFS settings are. My big thing here, aside from making sure people do check out video editing, you should know the mod team works both sides of the fence and tries to keep editors professionally oriented and the hobbyist over on video editing, not that they should never mix, but when somebody on video editing goes, oh, I think I know enough to hang out a shingle and do some part-time work, we go, hey, wait a second, buddy. Go check out the Ask a Pro thread before you try and go, oh, why aren't I getting enough work off of Fiverr? What did you want to say about this thread, sir?
Well, the original, the OP in the original thread, I read into it as they were looking for more artistry tricks as opposed to push this number, etc. But the reason I like about this is for decades we all did the mix to 75 dB or 78 dB for TV and 82 or 85 for film, and those were the standards. And over the past 20 years or so, we've now gone through a few different iterations that are averaging the peak volume. So the overall volume will be lower over a longer period of time because it's not just counting spikes. And when you try and view things on YouTube, YouTube is mangling your audio. They will, just like they will transcode everything you upload. No, there's no way around it. Don't try and convince me you're right, because you're not. Your audio will be compressed. And this thread goes into the Stats for Nerds section on your YouTube video, where you can actually pull up if you absolutely crazy. In fact, great story. I know this is a little bit longer, but one of the last things I did as an audio guy was Slayer. The band Slayer had music mastered, and they had a new album coming out, and they did 3 music videos. And I knew the picture editor, Ed Marks, fantastic guy, Jeepers Creepers, among a bunch of other horror stuff. And they approached me about doing the sound design for the music video, which is just bookends for the song. And I knew that we'd have to combat the compression that was going to happen with YouTube, but I also knew that, after we went through the final mix, the dynamics of the final mix was going to be slightly different than the dynamics of the what was going to be on YouTube, because it was going to be used in other places as well. And I remember, and I know you're not supposed to do this, I went through the comments on the music video, and someone was complaining about how this music video sounds different than it does on the album. And I could have gone on the, well, that's on a that's a digital file. It's not compressed like it is on YouTube, and there were the bookends which change the compression. But all this is to say that you have to know your enemy, and you have to know what YouTube is going to do to your audio. So by following the numbers here, will get your mix closer to what your artistic vision is, and that's very important, obviously.
We see this all the time about YouTube or any other platform showing up your work around color as well. And there's a right now a big debate over on colorists about, well, if Apple makes such great screens, why do we, do I really need, if my client is always going to listen to stuff on earbuds, do I really need to buy good speakers? I think what's most important is knowing the compromise that you're making and testing it on more than a professional platform, on a consumer platform, if you're trying to have the highest quality, regardless of its sound or picture. And in fact, it's why I think Quibi failed, because nobody actually found themselves watching 30 to 60-minute pieces of vertical video in their hand.
I absolutely agree with you. And that's been a standard practice for music engineers, audio folks,
colorists.
And colorists. Let's, in that case, watch, but let's listen to this on suboptimal speakers. Anyone who's mixed with Oratones knows exactly what I'm talking about. You would mix it on Oratones to make sure dialogue came through for people who had tinny speakers on their old TV sets. And the same is true with color. If you are grading something on a subpar monitor, you don't know how that's going to replicate on all these other consumer devices. But if you grade it well on a good monitor, you're pretty well guaranteed that it's going to be somewhat approximated within the ballpark on all the other sub devices.
There's one more part there, which is those professional devices, that professional monitor, the professional speakers. You know your system. You know what everything is equivocated. You can trust that system. It may not look like the iPhone screen. It may not sound like those earbuds or this headphone, but you know exactly replicably what it is. And if you go into somebody else's mixing suite, somebody else's calibrated mixing suite, somebody else's calibrated color room, you know that the image will look pretty similar. You can't control grandma's pink TV along these lines. Let's take us over to our last two. Freelancer staffs, pro or cons. Pretty much freelance, a lot of hustle, staffed, less money, a lot more safety. I don't know if there's much more to say than that.
I'll do a callback to something I said earlier. I'm a big fan of freelancing in your 20s, learning those soft skills, finding out what niche you like working in, whether it's doc, whether it's short form, whether it's TV, whether it's feature film, whether it's corporate, whether it's weddings. Freelance and find what you dig, and then try and do that as a career. So I'm a big fan of doing that. And also,
where were you when I was younger? I'm doing it all wrong.
I also, in any position I take, which are usually, full time, I'm always keeping the door open for side work. I know we all have a side hustle, but I also do it because I need to keep up on things that aren't necessarily in my day-to-day work.
That's why I browse Reddit. That's why I moderate Redditors is specifically to keep me sharp as possible. Because instead of me having one set of eyes, I have today, it's 94,722 eyes looking at what's coming up professionally. Hey, let's see your home editing setups, and we're actually going to look at these. Let's do just some real quick, what we like, what we don't like of these pictures, because I love this. We should do this probably a couple times a year, or have people like on Fridays post their postations.
Yes, sir. In the show notes, you can put a link to this. So if anyone's listening and not watching, they can pull that up later.
For the day where we're all listening and not watching because we're on our car, you should know that at very least the YouTube has links to each and every thread we look at. So with that being said here, I am treeing. Here's mine. I love this setup. I like the vertical monitor. Looks like they got maybe Slack running over there. It's Media Composer for the win here for number one, and the script on the right. I don't know. I like the big bright light on the right. Michael.
Yeah, there's a lot of nice things about this. I really like the vertical monitors, especially when you're doing stuff like script sync or long bins. I like that. I can't tell if on the left that's a plant or bad cable management. Also, on the right, you have a computer. It looks cool, but I don't know if there's a fan noise. That would get to bother me. Also, if your screen on the left is black and the screen in the middle is kind of a gray, but then on your far right is white, my eyes would constantly be shifting back and forth between light and dark, and that would kill me. So I'd probably try and find some middle ground in terms of the color.
I will tell you, I love the fact that there are not one but two mechanical keyboards there, because I'm a mechanical keyboard geek on those ones.
I wonder if there's two computers running.
There is. There is. In front of the headphones, that's a laptop.
Oh, I see. Okay, I thought that was just like a.
But I have two keyboards, and I'll sometimes switch between them. Let's take a look at Bob's Your Uncle, or Bob Z's Your Uncle, which is a great username. Somebody before said that top one. I like this one. I like this one. This is okay. I like the chair. I like the sparsity. I want those speakers. I want them on the wall. I don't want them underneath there. That's just me. They also are using a colorized keyboard at some point. Not today. You'll have to just file this away for yourself, Michael. I don't like colorized keyboards. And when you ask me, when we have a reason, when somebody goes, what keyboard should I buy? And we have the discussion over that colorized Avid or Premier keyboard, I'll give you my rationale why that's an utter mistake. But I like the setup. This is nice.
A couple things. I'm assuming the monitor on the far right is a broadcast monitor. And that's why it's a kind of an odd shape, doesn't really match anything else. And that makes complete sense because normally video monitors, the computer monitors are purchased at different times and serve different uses. I hope the person isn't going to kick their machines because the machines are kind of under the table pointed at an angle. Also, that looks like a home setup, which is great, but I'm also willing to bet that on the wall behind them, there's no treatments. So that looks like it's probably a square room. And if anyone has set up speakers in a square room with no sound dampening, you're going to get slapped back. And that's going to be hard to edit with. There is some carpet in there, which should help a little bit. But I'm a big fan of, like you said, mounting speakers, but also setting up some sound dampening to get rid of those standing waves and reverberations in the back.
Outstanding. Hey, Bauer Born Bond, definitely an action film sort of person, has a standing desk here. It's got a nice fatigue relief pad, which I like. Monitors are mounted on the desk, meaning if they go up or down, I'll have to do that during one of these. I'll have to do a standing desk while we're here. They've got it set. Oh, he's got Bauer and Bond as backgrounds there. Actually, I don't know if that's on the left. I think that's McQueen. Not McQueen. It's Bullet. I think that.
Yes.
I think that's, or maybe it's Bond. I like the setup. This is nice. The glass, the windows behind, I hope those are blackout curtains, just because it strikes me as the light coming in is going to be pretty brutal at some types of the day. But this is a pretty setup.
Yeah, I to your point, I think grading may be a little bit difficult depending on the time of the day and the light coming in. But I like the fact that they can defocus on the computer screen and look outside and see a dog crossing the street or a squirrel on a tree and just bring you more home. So I like that a lot. Not a huge fan. I think those are rockets. The speakers, I think those are KRKs. Not a huge fan of those, but everyone's ears are different.
I love the fact that you called out the speaker type. I love that.
I think they're the only ones that have the yellow cones. In any event.
Here we've got Random Nina, who I'm going to guess this is the office. This might not be a home office.
Is that an ultra wide?
That is an ultra wide. We saw an ultra wide curved a little bit earlier, but this is definitely.
I just want to make sure this isn't like a fisheye lens, right? So everything is distorted on the sides. But I swear by ultra wides. I love them. I love my curved ultra wide. It's fantastic. So you can't go wrong with that. They've got the keyboard.
The keyboard I'm not a fan of. Again, you'll have to pointedly ask me for me to reveal why. I also notice it's a nice Mac Studio. There are no speakers in here, which means they're probably only mixing in headphones. Not the greatest sin in the world, but a little bit of a sin.
What's under the right side of the monitor is that it looks like there's paper and some tchotchkes. Is that a dock? Is that maybe a speaker? Maybe a mono speaker?
I don't know what that is, but I like the.
Scroll down because I think
there's a promise.
Pegasus, the RAID.
There's a RAID on the left. The RAID is over here.
Oh, okay.
Let's see if there's something else. More opportunity to do color. My first job needing help in color. Not a budget. I'm running into a little lag on my system. I did not have the 6K to get the Ultra and a Flanders. that comes back to, our discussion over color and what's known in the color side as stupid, sexy Flanders. It's Flanders Scientific FSI, just phenomenal color, trustable color grading monitors. What I have at home, of course. Sorry, so sorry. No, it's a good setup. It just feels.
I'm glad you work on commission.
I do. It just feels a little cramped. Would be my only thing for me.
Yeah, but if you're working at the office, you kind of get what you're dealt.
100%.
So I can't fault them for that.
100%. Okay, I think we've got just one or two. Of course, there's the subreddits called Battle Stations and Mac setups, and I'm sure there's a PC setups out there. Peachy Pink, it ain't pretty. Peachy, I think it's really gorgeous. Don't you let anybody tell you otherwise. Certainly not these two a-holes here. It's a system where you are clearly working. You're clearly getting the job done. What else would you say, Michael?
Worried about silverware?
Spelling on the keyboard. Spelling on the keyboard. There we go.
I don't know. Maybe somebody was emptying their one hitter. I don't know. I don't know what that is in front. Maybe that's just wear and tear. Yeah, I don't know what that is.
Hey, brother, there are days where my desk might be messier than I'd like. There's a reason that I'm pulled in real tight, It
looks functional and it looks comfortable.
It looks functional and comfortable. Hey, take a look at our Roundhouse, who I'm love the indirect lighting, especially the light behind the monitor. I'd like the speakers. I don't know if it's wider or something. They just strike me as being too off axis for me. But beyond that, I'd love the curved monitor.
Yeah, I'd agree with that as well. I kind of like my near fields a little bit closer. But it looks like again, this may be a fisheye lens to some extent because it's distorted around there, so it may be a distorting perspective. They're KRKs as long as they work for you. But again, the ultra wide, it looks like that's curved too, and I'm so glad I went with curved over a flat screen.
Save the platypi. I can't see enough of it, but I definitely am seeing a monitor above meant for probably playback. I can't see what that drink is there, but there's a small part of me who on a Friday, because it's Friday today, goes, I hope that's a beer.
Now, did the description say that they're editing on a 55-inch TV?
I'm taking the editing
27-inch.
I'm taking the editing out of the spare bedroom to a literal level, rocking a 55-inch Hisense TV I picked up on BF for $200 as my main monitor and a 27 HP IPS hanging from a clamp on the top rack like a boss. Gotta say, love the home setups. That one's a little insane.
I tried editing off a monitor that big once. It was actually, it wasn't a 55, it was a 42. And what I ended up doing is none of my important windows were more than 3/4 of the way from the bottom of the screen because I had to keep looking up and do this. It was like a tennis match. And I said, okay, so all my audio plugins, I'm just going to put those windows up there because I don't have to look at them often, but my timeline, everything were all, the last 3/4 of the screen. It was just too big.
I worked on this really phenomenal Dell ultra wide, and it's like a 5K screen. It's not just two. It was just gigantic. And what I ended up doing is building into a Stream Deck a bunch of buttons to go, put that over there, put that over there, put that in the center, and allowing me to work really quickly and keeping my generalized focus in the center of the screen. It definitely makes a difference. I can't work off of anything that big when it's that close to me. I find that the magic number at about arm's length is about 32-inch screens, 32, 34-inch. Feels about right for arm length distance. We have here Rusty Burritos, my minimal workhorse setup, which I love, again with the mechanical keyboard. Speakers still are a little too close for me, but we should have made them all make sure they put their editing system on screen. We'll ask for those requirements, and I hope we'll see some of them in the commentary here or over on YouTube.
You know what that means? That means we're going to have to share our setups.
Oh, I don't have it easy as a back.
So if we throw stones,
you're
right. They can throw them back.
I have a very, very, very staged shot of my system with all the grading stuff up on purpose for that exact reason. Let's see what else we have. I think we're coming towards the end of this. Here's mine. This might be my favorite. I have 5 monitors. The top right is for the script. The bottom right is for footage I'm dragging. The 2 middle ones are for Premiere, and the left is for talking with clients and OBS in case I need to record something. My Lord, I want to know what the heat is in that room.
The only time I see that many monitors is when I'm looking at someone doing a broadcast switch from home, right? When everyone is sent home, and so you have someone monitoring every angle, and then sending that out to the NOC. That's just a ton of monitors, and I hope that your neck is okay. But I wish I could utilize something that had that many monitors.
Right with you. I'm more shooter than editor, says Demo Whale. My super simple setup. It's nice and minimalist, but they're more shooter than editor. Love the setup. Love the camera there. Very minimalistic.
Is that in a garage? And is that like a pull-up door?
Pardon me. Holy crap, that is. It's gorgeous then. It's a see-through pull-up door. I'm hoping it's somewhere warm and doesn't get really rough weather. And secure.
Someone walks by the clear glass door and sees a brand new iMac or whatnot.
By the way, this one will be our last one, and this will give something for people to complain that our short forms had a long form in it. But, my feeling is once we started calling out one, we should look at them all. And here we happen to have Dave's, my home office convertible setup. I love that standing desk piece that on the right. I used something exactly like this at the beginning of the pandemic, and now I'm at a fully insane standing desk. Also, I want to call out that timeline back there. Look at that one screen. I feel like that one, I'm not checking. I should go look, but I feel like that's Media Composer. But you can see just how well laid out all of it is. I like to edit standing
up.
What
about the iMac? Is the iMac not being used? There's an iMac behind beneath the big monitor, and I'm guessing the laptop on the left is driving the monitors on the right.
I think you're right. I think that iMac is a stand. I think it's an old iMac. If you look at it, it's not the candy iMac, but it's a pretty big iMac right there. I think it might be a stand in and of itself. They say most of the action takes place on the 40-inch LG TV. I keep the bins open on a 23 Delt swivel. When I want to work, I'll move my spongy map out of the way, drop the uplift. I'm just looking to see MacBook Pro. I don't see anything about the iMac. So,
I'm wondering how often they knock that over, the keyboard stand.
I didn't knock it over once. It was more of I would run out of mouse room all the time, or something like that. All right. I think we're done with our short forms, and I think it is time for us to bring up our divider. And here we come back, Michael, for the section that's called FMK. And we recommend to everybody to go Google that if you don't know what that means. And today's FMK is YouTube, Vimeo, and Frame. That would be Frame.io. And you called it before. We've got to go through them. F and M and then K. F. Like.
So, who am I to F this week? I would be effing Frame, but it would be I respect you. I love what you're doing, as opposed to a more demeaning type of effing. I love Frame. I have so many friends that work there. They're just doing incredible work. And now that they're with Adobe, I think that's fantastic. So I'd be effing Frame.
See, I'm gonna F YouTube. I mean, I know this is where this is going. It's a dalliance. It's on the side. I always feel a little guilty, with it. I'm gonna M Frame. I'm gonna 100% M Frame because Frame has radically changed that client review process. I think the camera to cloud stuff is brilliant. I think all the other things they're doing is great. But Frame did the dream. Emory, years ago, all I wanted was a client to be able to say what's wrong and those markers to show up on my timeline. And everything else is nice, but that's the one. And it's funny because all the people I know complain that the producers won't read and still email notes is beyond me. Who would you M?
I'd be Emming YouTube. And that's because one of the most important things to me in our industry, and I think it should be for more majority of people in our industry, is community and people creating. And YouTube has democratized that to where everyone can create, everyone can communicate. And while you can do that on Frame to some extent, the first step in the creative process, or not the first step, but a main step, is getting it out there for everyone to see. And I think YouTube does that better than just about anyone. So for that reason, I'm going to be marrying YouTube for the warts and all.
Wow. Which is, by the way, is a great time to mention, if you've not seen Five Things, you need to go out and find on YouTube Five Things, where Michael sits back and breaks down really complex text pieces into 5 separate sections. And that brings us to Kay, and I think we're both killing Vimeo, a company that struggles to decide what they want their product to be, and for independents, try and make it. Wait, didn't they raise the prices again? Something like that?
Vimeo has made no bones about the fact that they're moving B2B instead of B2C. So it's much more for businesses rather than consumers. That was readily apparent when they went public last year and their stock just took a dive. I know a few folks that use Vimeo because you can have high-res, ProRes files, right? They won't always recompress them. They offer, more secure private links, et cetera, et cetera. So there are some good features, but I see it being used less and less by creatives. And for that reason, I don't care.
Yeah, I'm right with you. It's the soon to be the MySpace of, and if you're a fan of Vimeo, I think it's sad, but both of us it falls under the K category.
Yeah, we have to make tough choices. Something had to hit the cutting room floor. Some had to go into a magazine, a dirty magazine, right? Some we just had to put on our finger. So this week, this is where we are.
Wow. Okay, well, let's wrap up our second Star Wipes. Michael, it's, as each time it's an adventure. Tell us a little bit about maybe in the upcoming week or two where somebody can find you. When is that next 5 Things coming out?
I'm trying to shoot it this weekend. If you can see in the background, I know I've got a really shallow lens on my camera, so it's out of focus. But the camera is set up behind me facing this way. So that's why you see like C-stands and lights and my preview monitor over there. So hopefully I'll be shooting this weekend, and then hopefully in a week or so, I'll get out. I'll have it get out. But because of the blog post I have, and because I'm putting it on different platforms, it takes a while to do all that. So hopefully within the next week or so. But who knows? I have a lot of other things going on right now, which I can share at a later date on a later podcast. But you can catch me obviously at Michael Kammes on all the various social platforms, or 5thingsseries.com or michaelkammes.com.
That is fantastic. I'm excited to see when you do have news that you're able to tell us about it. My name is Jeff Greenberg. I am at J. Greenberg Consulting. I'm Film Geek on all your favorite social networks. I'm also Greenysmac here at Reddit at our editors, where I'm the lead moderator, and this has all sort of been my crazy idea that it would be fun to break apart, and gives me a chance to have a discussion with my friend about what we were both voraciously reading anyway. This upcoming week, if you're interested, there's a free event called the Video Creator University where I'm going to be speaking. I'll have to post in the notes some sort of link to it, along with a link to a referral code, because I'm not making any money for you going there, but then they'll get to see the power of Reddit. And I need groups like this to see the power of Reddit. I'm speaking on a bunch of things here. I'm doing a 15-second film festival where at the end you could win an iPad. And the whole goal, though, isn't to make great work. It's just to do some creating. I'm also doing a talk on some of the AI technologies that I've got in the forefront, things that are all practical. Michael, any last words?
I like this. I think we're kind of feeling each other out, so to speak, kind of like sportscasters with color commentary and the analyst. And I think we're getting through this, and I think this is coming together a lot more quickly I had envisioned.
I'm enjoying it. I believe in that idea that you should publish before you're ready. And for those of you out there saying this should become a podcast, it won't be by the end of August, but it sure as hell better be by the end of September. Thanks again for watching. This was Star Wipes, the commentary on our editors. Thanks for joining us. Feel free to tell us what we did right, what we did wrong, and best of all, give us your ideas in the comments. Thanks again for watching.